So as I set off on my trip of the Highlands and Islands, it would be true to say I was quite apprehensive. I was basically heading off with nothing booked apart from that first ferry to Arran and a date I had to be back in work in 6 weeks' time. I knew parts of the journey were going to be very isolated and lonely, particularly up that northwest corner, but I was getting a lift on the ferry with some friends. They were going to get me a good starting position at Dunure, which would save me about a day's and a half cycling, and really that was going to be it. One of these friends caught this shot of me filming some footage for you already on the drive up the coast. This was the first indication that Scotland was going to offer some interesting mountains and islands. A sunset view across to Arran before I settled down for the night with my bedmate Rudy. And so we have actual day one. I'm just ready to set off on what will be a 60-kilometre ride to the ferry. The initial coast road from Dunore is grand. There's even a castle you can have a look at. You're basically coming off this headland, and in fact you join onto Eurovelo 1. You may remember that from my Irish trips. Unfortunately in Scotland I'm only following a brief section of it that passes through the city of Ayr and then north. So day one. This is a very mixed cycling day. At the moment I'm on a very nice greenway that's paralleling the rail line, but I've just come through the port of Ayr and around is it Prestwick Airport, and that was a nightmare. It was just industrial estates, dual carriageways, really twisty route that was going all over the place, and that I had to stop every minute to check that I was still on the right track, so you lose time when you're doing that. I mean, the route through it was good because it kept me off all the kind of busy roads you get around ports and airports, so I'm sure you can imagine that yourself, but yeah, not exactly fun. But this bit is much nicer, I think you'll agree. On my way to Ardrossan, which is the port that brings me over to Arran, I've 30k to go, and I think that I have to be there in about 2.75 hours, so I should be fine. I was getting a bit worried about time. Not sure how much video I'll shoot today. Certainly if it's all industrial. I kind of half wish I did have the camera mounted actually, because it would have been quite funny, but it's not so beautiful. So anyway, that's a quick update where I am. Got about 70k to do. 20k is to get to the port, ferry over to Arran, and then about 20k the other side, although I'm not entirely decided yet where I'm going to camp, so that distance might vary. Anyway, it's the start, day one. Decidedly mixed scenery all right so far. Now, to be fair, quite a lot of the total route was this sort of safe cycle path, completely segregated, very worthwhile, and even the tricky bit through Ayr was okay. And in part this possibly is because this is Eurovelo 1, although the limited exposure I was to have to the Scottish long-distance cycling routes made me think they were a whole lot better than the things I had encountered in Ireland. There's some real infrastructure has been built for some of these. But now we have what, in retrospect, is a key moment, although I was not aware of it at the time. Eurovelo 1 runs up the coast from Portugal, and this is the point that I leave it. It's going off to twist a course to the east coast around Inverness, and it then comes down that coast from there. A future route that I may well follow, I think. So the cycle track here is going to continue all the way around the coast to the port of Ardrossan. That's the port that the ferry to Arran leaves from every couple of hours. I arrived to find it was running late. I did not suspect quite how disrupted the Scottish ferry system has been by a lack of investment, but I'd experienced it a few times. And the beauty of Arran as I pulled in at the other side of the crossing also took me by surprise. I should really have expected this. Aware that I had overdone things cycling the Irish coast a week earlier, I decided on the crossing I would not repeat that mistake and I'd take it easy and head for the campsite at Glen Rossa on my first night, which is only a short distance from Brodick, which is where the ferry arrives. This is quite an informal campsite. You basically leave a fiver for each night you stay, and there's a toilet and a sink to wash in and not much else. Basic enough, but absolutely fine for me in particular, as otherwise I'd probably have been wild camping about 20 kilometres up the coast. It was a hot day, so I got the tent up quickly and went for the other facility offered, which is the river that runs along one side of the campsite. Took a dip in it, and I have to say the water was actually surprisingly warm. Then I took the bike back out for a brief spin up the valley. Basically, this is just a dirt track at this stage. Gets more and more gravelly as you go. I think there was a gate I also went through, and at a certain point I just decided it was too rough to be worth pushing on. I turned around and came back, but you definitely could go further. There's pools further up here that people also swim in. This valley is absolutely stunning. It was well worth doing it. Got a bit of a photo shoot in, I mean, who can blame me? But I really enjoyed the view. Then I turned around, went back down and went back into Brodick, where I went to one of the hotels, had a meal, a couple of pints and charged my battery. You've no idea how much work it is to film one of those cycle buys. I'm not going to do many of them. Anyway, back from the hotel, I got the midge net on because there was quite a lot of them. Broke out the expandable cup of wine, my old tradition from the Irish coast cycle, and settled in to enjoy what was a magnificent sunset, although you definitely wanted to have that midge net. So this was the first day of my Scottish Highland cycle. Give me a thumbs up if you liked the video, and do give the channel a follow to get the rest of the Scottish adventures and whatever I get up to next year.